Hello, this is a video to show you just how quickly you can get started extracting attachments connected to SAP documents using Alteryx. Let's start in SAP using Transaction FB03 to show you an example of an attachment connected to an SAP document. So we run the transaction to view the accounting document, and against that document there's a single attachment, as you can see, which is just an invoice. In the background, SAP is storing in this table a mapping between documents and their related attachments. I'm going to search using my company code in this case to find that mapping, and you can see that there's an entry here that has company code, the accounting document and the year, and it's this that gives us the unique key that we can hook on to pull these data from SAP. So let's jump into Alteryx and extract our document. Firstly, we put in an SAP logon tool and connect to our system. Just ping it, let's check it's all connected correctly. And I'm going to use table tool to identify the documents that are relevant to me. I'm going to use BKPF to look at the accounting documents. The idea here is to identify any GL postings that are relevant to me, and then by building the key from the BKPF table, search for attachments that are related to those documents. I'm going to add some filters now into my table tool. Company code, fiscal year. Let's do document type just to restrict it down, so we can be very specific exactly which documents we're looking for, and then retrieve exactly the attachments that we're interested in. Okay, so we've identified our documents, so now let's find the related attachments to those documents. I'm going to use a formula tool to add an extra column on my output here, which will use the data from BKPF to build that document ID that we saw in the table back in SAP. Now I'm going to use the ACS filter tool to prepare a dynamic filter for my next table, which will be that technical table which maps from my document ID across to the attachments. So here's the table tool that we're going to feed our dynamic filter into, and the table we use is the technical mapping table we saw in SAP. Now what we're looking to do here is connect our document with our attachment. So we need to feed in inst ID A and return inst ID B, and if I turn on the two technical names here, you can see them in these two fields here. So we're inputting A, we want to output B, which is the technical identifier for the attachment itself. Now I'm just going to add in a selection tool here because I want to change these two descriptions. You can see inst ID A and inst ID B, and very helpfully SAP have given them exactly the same description, so it's hard to identify which is which. So we're just adding that tool in, and now we can use our SAP document tool, which will retrieve the attachments we're looking for. So I'll connect that to our SAP logon tool to connect it to the system, and also to our flow to pass the identifiers into the tool. There's a small bit of configuration that's just to identify which field we should use from our input, and now we've named them nicely, we know it's inst ID B, and now we can run the workflow to extract our attachments. We see that run successfully. And if we click on the first output anchor, we can see the details of a single document. This is the case, of course, for our demo, but there's no reason why there shouldn't be many documents in this list. We see it's of type PDF, and we can see a description in there. And when we click on the final anchor, we can see the hexadecimal coding behind that document. You will have noticed that the data for that output was on several rows, so we're going to use a summation tool to concatenate that data. We do that very simply by adding document ID as a group, and then the line output to be concatenated. Very simple use of a standard Alteryx tool. Must remember not to put any separators in. Next we use another standard tool in the developer kit to convert that hex output into a blob, and it's this that will be downloaded as the final attachment. So we configure our developer tool we tell the tool where the hex sits. It's in the concatenated line, and that we're converted from hex to blob. And next we add in a formula tool, and we're going to use this to create a file name so that we can easily identify the attachments that we extract. So this is a name that will be applied dynamically. So we're going to use the object name, or the description of the particular attachment, its ID, and then add an extension which relates to the object type, which obviously we saw was PDF, and you can see that in the preview here. Next we add in an Alteryx join tool, and that will connect our file name to our attachment. We join using the document ID. We don't need all the outputs, so let's remove them all except for these last two, so file name, and that concat line is where the blob for the output is. And finally we add a blob output tool, which will output to a given destination which we can define, but we can replace the file name dynamically using the file name that we've built using the select tool. So that's everything done. So let's run through the workflow, and once it's run, that document's been outputted via that blob tool. If we look at the summation tool, we can see that our multiple lines have been concatenated into a single blob, and that blob has been output into the file location we requested. And so that's a workflow to extract attachments from SAP built from scratch in 5 minutes. I hope you found this video useful, but if you want more information, please visit our website on dvwanalytics.com. Thank you.